Today, I've got a special guest in Dr. Fred Moss. Welcome to the show, Fred.
Thanks for having me, Aaron. It's great to be here.
Can you tell people a little bit about yourself, please, and what you're all about?
Yeah, so I'm a physician. I'm a psychiatrist. I've been a psychiatrist for about 36 years, and I've been in the mental health field for another 9 years before that. As I started as a child care worker I guess, about 45 years ago now. And I started as a child care worker after I dropped out of school for the second time. So let's get to that. Basically, I was born to be a healer. I was born in a family in some form of chaos and disarray. I had two brothers, 10 years and 14 years older than me. And from what I understand, there was a fair amount of conflict and confusion in the family. And I was being called on to be the bundle of joy that could bring love and connection back to a family that was in that level of chaos. And apparently, I did a pretty good job for the first couple of years of my life. I'm sure my brothers wouldn't say that I've been consistent for 66 years, but nevertheless, I did a pretty good job rolling out and learning how to smile and laugh and be entertainment, and also how to listen, like how to watch. And I really firmly remember being in my playpen and watching my brothers actually communicate with my parents and hoping and wishing and praying that someday I would be able to communicate like a big boy as well. So that's what I was hoping for. I really just wanted to learn how to communicate, how to connect, how to speak and listen, how to create stuff with other people. And it seemed like that was inherently the goal of being alive, and that's really what I was after. So I thought, I learned that school was going to be coming. Right? They told me that here comes school when I get to be about 5. And my brothers prepared me for school in a big way by teaching me how to read and teaching me how to write and teaching me how to do simple mathematics. And so I was pretty precocious because I knew all these things. I knew a little bit more too. I knew a little bit about, even a little bit about sex, drugs, and rock and roll because that's what my brothers were up to as well. And when I arrived in kindergarten, I was in a different state than most of my peers who were more interested in, like, I don't know, throwing blocks and taking naps and things like that. And I was interested in that too, although I had this other stuff going on. And I was expecting to learn how to communicate because what else could school be about? But instead, I learned that if I tried to talk, I would be told to be quiet and to sit down and to do what the teacher says and to regurgitate exactly what they say in order I could pass to the next grade. And this was kind of disturbing, as I recall, kind of like disappointing. And I was put into the sixth grade reading class as early as first grade so that I could, like, because I knew how to read. And so I was separated from my class in a lot of ways. On the other hand, I was always really funny and, got good grades. Um, and I was like the class clown. And so the teachers didn't know what to do with me. There's no elementary school teacher who's ever forgotten having Fred on their roster. And I was there for, really just expecting to communicate, but it wasn't happening. So I could tell that the older kids were communicating better than me, and I thought that would happen in the later years, maybe junior high or maybe high school. But as I entered junior high or as I entered high school, I saw that it was even worse. That even more so, we were asked to be quiet. Even more so, just sit down and shut up and listen and do what the teacher says. So again, pretty disappointing, and I ended up, being kind of a rebel for those years, including in high school, and skipping a lot of classes and finding other things to do outside of school. Um, and it was the '70s, so I did some of those things as well, and got myself interested in, I liked, I had a few different heroes in my life, that I followed. Bruce Springsteen showed up when I was a junior, and I was an audiophile already, and I saw him in 1975, and I had never even heard of him on the day that I saw him. So, he was, by now everybody's heard of him, but back then it was like, I was asked to see him, and we had heard he was the next Bob Dylan, my friend and I, and his mother, my friend's mother, was a critic for one of the local newspapers. So she sent us to the show in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and it was only half full, small auditorium, half full, general admission seating, just like like a folk singer is what we thought. But we were there for a 4.5 hour, two intermission show, and it was the finest concert experience I've ever had to this very day. I don't expect anything to ever be like that again. And I was able to turn on the rest of my high school to him as well. So Mark and I, a friend I went, we were like, oh, that's the best musician we've ever seen. And we bought tickets for the rest of my high school, 12 tickets for our best friends. And we had the second row for the next show, which was in Detroit just a few weeks later. And in between those shows, Bruce hit Newsweek and Time. You know, he was on the cover of Newsweek and Time in between those shows. He became very famous that same week with Born to Run. And there we were, you know, like on the front edge of introducing our class. And he generally saved my life, you know, in a lot of ways. My life was just burning down, and I could see that there was someone there who really got it, who really knew how to bring poetry and creativity. And he was a badass, and he was, you know, fascinating and told the stories. I really just adored him. Anyways, moving forward, I really expected to, you know, I could see he was communicating. That was the other thing. I could really see that this was a man who knew how to communicate from the front of the stage and knew how to connect with his audience. Um, it's not like I'm out of my life after Bruce, although I, you know, every time I see him, and every morning I see him now, you know, in my feed, like someone posts something cool about him and Patty or the E Street Band or something. So I don't usually bring him up, but I mean, just I really recall how important he was in my high school. And then I decided after high school, because it was so disappointing, that I would go try to college. And um, I was, you know, go to Ann Arbor, Michigan, University of Michigan, known for, you know, for being activists and speaking out and all that. And I expected that to happen in Ann Arbor. Both my brothers had been there. And again, it was kind of disappointing in the classrooms. I was in the engineering school, and again, not open discourse was not being encouraged. Maybe in the streets, a little bit in Ann Arbor, I learned how to communicate again. But after about a year and a half of putting up with that, I decided I didn't want to go to college anymore. And I dropped out and got on a bus and went 3,000 miles to Berkeley, California, in order to find my life. You know, like, what's my life about? And I had great summer in Berkeley. You really learned a lot. Um, you know, really did find out a little bit about what my life was about. But it wasn't sustainable. My family decided that I should go back to school, and they encouraged me one day. I do remember the phone call that there was this new industry that was just breaking through, and they thought I would be good at it given my aptitude. You might have heard of the industry. It was called computers. And the only computer in all of Michigan was at the University of Michigan. So back on a bus, I went. I went all the way back to Michigan. I got re-enrolled in the University of Michigan and back in the computer business this time. There I was in the big computer room. It was a 2-acre facility, you know, and we were up all night doing batch jobs and punch cards, and that's what it was, turning in big stacks of punch cards, and that was the programming. And man, that was pretty brutal too. And I just decided I didn't want to do that either, so I dropped out a second time. And I promised I would never go back to college again. I told my mom that, and she said, "That's okay. You don't have to go back to college, but you have to get a job." And you know, it's like, I know, mom. Moms will be like that. So she got me an application um, for a state mental health facility in Northwest Detroit called Fairlawn Center. And there thought I was just going to stay for orientation. You see, they were paying me $13 an hour and 40 hours a week just to sit there in a room and be oriented. I could do that. There was 3 weeks of orientation. It's more than $1,000. I figured I'd just take my paychecks and buy myself a car and drive around the country and figure out what my life was about. But in the fourth week, my friend Paul encouraged me to go up to the floors with the kids, and they were about 6 or 7 years younger than us, not very much younger. It's kind of our peers in some ways. And I did that. You know, I was afraid. I remember that day. I remember being really chilled that day, and went up there and began to talk to people and actually communicate effectively with people. Actually connect with these kids. Like, I love them. You know, I still remember them, and they were my, you know, they were my buds. They were my homies. They were my people. And I was finally getting paid to communicate. I was finally being appreciated for communication. And it wasn't just talking, it was listening, it was being with somebody, it was connecting. And in that connection, the healing that would take place was extraordinary. It would take place over there with the kids, and it would take place with me or the whole unit as well. But the thing I really despised about that, I kept that job for a few years, and the thing I despised about that job was actually psychiatry. I couldn't understand psychiatry at all. I was, you know, they weren't based on communication. It was, you know, we would call them if Jimmy was up too late or Timmy and Tony got into a fight or something, and they'd come down and interview the child or children for a few seconds, and then interview us for a few seconds, go in a nursing home and write an order. And then we'd have to go retrieve the child and bring him into the quiet room, hold him down, slip down his sweatpants, and give him some form of an injection of a antipsychotic, anti-anxiety, stupor-producing cocktail. And if they stayed in a stupor for the next 12 or 24 hours, we're supposed to chart that was a success story. I was like, man, this is just barbaric, unacceptable. And I couldn't really hang with that. So this time, instead of leaving the job, I decided I would become a psychiatrist, and didn't want to stay as a child care worker the rest of my life. So I went back to school at the same time that I was working and finished off my degree in Detroit, and then got, accepted to medical school, went to a great, great, great medical school in downtown Chicago. That was a place I learned how to communicate as well, downtown Chicago, not in medical school, no way, but definitely in downtown Chicago. I really, really learned a lot and loved Chicago. And off I went, becoming a psychiatrist, and I was, got my residency and then my fellowship in child and adolescent psychiatry. So now I was a specialist in the same topic. But while I was in medical school, an interesting thing happened to the whole paradigm, and that was the introduction of Prozac to the biological psychiatry world. See, prior to Prozac, there was no such thing as biological psychiatry. There's no such thing as chemical imbalance. That isn't how things got explained. But that day, when Prozac got introduced, things shifted drastically. And the world began to really appreciate Prozac. It was the number one drug sold around the planet, including the UK, everywhere. Um, all specialties included, and it was sold that way for 12 years. It was like, on the front of the charts, 12 years as the number one drug. And the idea was it was a panacea, that it would, take away what ailed you, it would, like, have you feel good. Like there was something wrong with you if you were feeling bad. And so they called it, chemical imbalance. And Prozac actually gave you a chemical imbalance. And the idea was it would give you a chemical balance and hopefully rebalance the imbalance that you came in with. I didn't buy that track at all, and but nevertheless, was released back into the real world, and I was being counted on now to be someone who made those diagnoses and who gave people labels, and then who prescribed medicines, and then watched them through that. And I became less and less about conversation and communication, because that isn't what people were calling for. So psychiatry became less and less about communication, more and more about medications, and you can hear that was misaligned with who I was, for sure. So over the next several years, that's what the jobs I had took were counting on me: the inpatient jobs, the outpatient jobs. I worked in orphanages and homeless shelters and nursing homes, and I worked in partial hospital programs and methadone clinics and Suboxone clinics. Not quite Suboxone yet, but rehab centers. And they were still all counting on me to just be the doctor. I don't have to know the patients. Over and over, it got worse and worse, basically, where they weren't. Not only were they not promoting communication, they weren't leaving me any time to have any communication. Just medicate, just diagnose and medicate. And I can't stand medicating people. I really can't. I'm just being honest about that. It's not something I'm eager to do ever, and haven't been since the day I graduated. So every prescription that I've written has been a little bit of a heartache for me, a little bit of a soul sacrifice. And I've written for, I don't know, well over 100. We've estimated well over 100,000 prescriptions in my life. And I've had over 30,000, probably closer to 40,000 people call me their doctor during that time, at least for a second. Sometimes they only see people for a second. And so I've had a fair amount of experience, but I didn't like the way the job was unfolding. So we're going to fast forward a little bit and see that, a few years later, about in 2006, so I began to do something pretty radical. At least it was considered by other people radical. To me, it seemed like it was really just counterbalancing and stable. And that was, I took my clients off of their medicine. And people thought, whoa, that's crazy. You're wild. They were like worried about it. And I kept on thinking, man, you should be worried when you drop these chemicals into people's mouth. That seems really worrying. But stopping the medicine, how can that be a huge problem after all? I mean, we're taking the toxins out of their mouth and we're letting them know that they're actually okay. So during that process, I learned that people actually did get better reliably and predictably better when I took them off the medicine. And sometimes, and most times, a diagnosis that they thought they had actually disappeared when I took them off their medicine. And this is my low risk patients to start, the ones who were generally doing pretty okay. And then I started using it in my middle risk patients, the ones a little bit riskier. Same thing, just making a deal with them and getting their consent, taking them off drugs with the help of their family and their caregivers. And they got better too, reliably better. And I started to believe and really get that these medicines and the treatment and the diagnosis and even the therapies actually perpetuate, if not cause, induce, increase, perpetuate, and maybe even cause the symptoms we're marketed to treat. Now, this is an interesting business model, but I don't think it's something I wanted to play in. It's a great business model, man. It's just fantastic. I wish I would have designed a business model. But, I didn't want to keep doing that. I just found that to be really disturbing. And I just am very interested in communication at the core of all healing. Um, So I wanted to scream this from the mountaintops, like go to the top of the building, shake my friends, shake my patients, shake my parents of patients, and let them know that what we're doing here isn't helping at all. And what we think we're doing really isn't helping at all. It's making things worse. And, in America, and I think this is probably true in UK, we take an oath that when we graduate medical school, it says first do no harm. And I now wasn't sure at all if I was first not doing harm. I kind of thought I might actually be doing harm. So I quit medicine a couple times, but before I did, I kind of cleared out my outpatient practice. I had like 2,000 people who were my patients, and I began to take many of them off the meds, and they got better, and then they were able to leave my practice and hopefully never even come back to psychiatry ever again. And that was fun, and I, got my job. I wanted to come work in New Zealand. Actually, I was looking for a license in New Zealand, hoping that that would be a country that didn't push medicine so far, but the license didn't fall. Didn't it fell through my license application. There was just too much to do to get that license, and I eventually just stopped the process and began to travel around the United States instead, and take my act around the United States as a traveling doctor, and locum tenens is what they call, and work in many different parts of the country in the same kind of facilities, and in the same that I just gave you the list of all the different modalities I've worked in. That was a little bit rewarding, but at the same time, I was seeing that the same things were being done all over the country exactly. It didn't matter what state I was in, the same process, same expectation, same outcomes, same diagnoses, same medication. So I would hop from job to job. They were usually short term jobs. And then I had the audacity to actually take my situation out of the country and start working in other countries using telepsychiatry, like Thailand and Bhutan and Nepal. I also worked in Israel, and then I worked in France, Italy, and none other than UK as well. And I did a lot of telepsychiatry from those countries. And I was just kept asking myself, like, why are people here? Why do they come see me? Why do the people? Why does anybody go see a psychiatrist? What's happening? What do they want? What do you think is going to happen when you knock on that doctor's door? How do you think they're going to help you? And what I got is that people are really interested in nothing less than a human connection. Really, really interested in having someone to connect with. And after all, that's what they're doing. They're coming to me hoping that they connect with me. That's what we're doing here in a podcast. You're hoping that I'll be a good connection. You're hoping your listeners connect to what I'm saying. We're all interested in some form of a connection. That was really good to know. And, but nevertheless, the field, it was hard to interject connection inside of what was really being asked from me as a physician, which it just seems so ironic every time I say that. It's like, well, what else would you really want from me but to connect with somebody? And they really don't want me to connect. That's really not what they're encouraging. So it does seem just absurd, but nevertheless, that's the way it goes. And so when I came back after a fair run out there in Europe, I came back and decided that I would be an entrepreneur and maybe not even do medicine anymore. And I built some practices, some transformational coaching or restorative coaching. Maybe I could be somebody who actually did something to undo the problem. And then what I learned is that the problem's not medications, and the problem's not the industry. It's not big pharma. It's not doctors. It's not insurance companies. You can't really blame the problem on anyone because it's all piecemeal. It just works together very well as a great model. But if we're going to take a stab at, take a bite, take a step into fixing the problem, the only place I could think of going that made any sense was directly to the patient, meaning The patient is not being forced to take those medicines. The patient's not even being forced to take on the diagnosis. The patient themselves are looking for confirmation when they come to a doctor that there's something wrong with them. See, they act like patients generally act like I went to a doctor to find out if there's something wrong with them. It's not really true. They come to a doctor to get confirmation that there's something wrong with them. They already know there's something wrong with them. They just want somebody to put a stamp of approval on the fact that there's something wrong with them. Meaning, psychiatry is the only subspecialty that I know of in all of medicine that if you actually tell the patient they're okay, they get furious. It's like, wow, what is that about? Oncology or, you know, cardiology or orthopedics. If you tell somebody they're okay, they believe you. Like it's good. They're happy. Yay, I'm okay. In psychiatry, they get upset and they go to the next doctor and get their confirmation of their diagnosis. People like being able to relinquish their responsibility for the life that they're having that isn't going the way that they hoped. This morning, for instance, right up to now, I had a difficult time this morning. I have a difficult time some mornings. I think I'm just human. It's hard to wake up sometimes. It's hard to understand the world. I don't always treat my wife as good as I would like. I don't treat myself as good as I would like. And I was giving myself some noise. It turns out that living life is really difficult. And it's really okay. It's really difficult for every single one of us, and really just getting that, maybe there's nothing wrong with me. As Krishnamurti said, it's no sign of mental health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. And I couldn't say it better. I mean, it's such a great quote. And, we instead think that we should be feeling, good all the time. And so when I started my practice, the practice of restorative coaching and transformational coaching, part of the job was to get these clients, to get these patients to realize that maybe there's nothing wrong with them. Imagine that. Maybe there's nothing wrong with you at all. Maybe, like, we don't blame a log for burning in a fire. It's a fire out here. It's freaking hard, man. It's hard to put this together. And anyone who acts like they have it together is simply lying. And they might be living in a small world where it looks like they have it together. But, dude, you don't have it together. I promise. I don't even know you, but you don't have it together. I already know that. You know
I
that
definitely
about
don't
me.
have it together. Yeah, yeah.
What's that?
I
You
would.
don't have it.
I definitely. I wouldn't claim to.
No. In the end, don't listen to anybody who says they do. So when you don't have it together, we all don't have it together. And there's nothing wrong with us for not having it together. And every one of us thinks there's something wrong with us. That's a thing. That's another thing. It's like, it's very easy to think that there's something wrong with you. In fact, it's a sign of being normal to know that there's something wrong with you because every one of us knows there's something wrong with us. That's called normal. So when we start looking at, well, what if I could convince people that there's nothing wrong with them in the first place, that life comes with all sorts of flavors, perfect ecstasy and miracles and wonder and beauty for sure on one side, and everything in between, then misery, discomfort, unpleasant, treachery and, um, unacceptable, unspeakable experiences, painful, etc. Disease and illness, etc. Like that's part of life. It's okay. That's part of life. And if I can get people to do that, well, then they won't have to go to a doctor to think that they need to be fixed. And when they go to a doctor to think they need to be fixed, doctors don't know about doing anything else but giving you medicines. And when they give you medicines, they finally give you that chemical imbalance you thought you had. And now you're actually having your condition perpetuated, induced, increased, or even caused by the treatment you're receiving. For some reason, this is thought to be a pretty controversial way to look at the whole field. And I get it. I guess for me, it's not controversial. It's just baseline understanding of truth. It's it. It's all it really is. I don't mean to ruffle any feathers. And I want to say one thing because there's probably some listeners out there. The number of people who are taking psychiatric drugs is extremely high. Well over 25% of the people on the planet are taking psychiatric drugs one way or another. And even if that just means a little Xanax here and there, a little Ativan here and there, occasional Adderall, those are all psychiatric drugs, sleep aids, etc. I mean, we're getting well over 25% when we include Adderall and sleep aids and Xanax. That. Um, if there's a listener out there who's pretty sure that they have received the proper diagnosis, they love their treatment, they love their therapist, they love their medications, they wouldn't trade it for the world. They have found they have found the gold, and they think that they don't agree with me, that their medicines do work, it's perfect, they wouldn't change it ever. Please keep doing what you're doing. Of course. Like, of course, I'm not here to argue with that. That's a terrific find. If you find that in any aspect of your life, you should keep doing it. Whatever you're looking at, if you found that you're at the end of the rope, that's as good as life gets, and I wouldn't trade this for the world, by golly, for sure, keep doing it. This conversation's for the hundreds of millions of people who don't feel that way. There's 100 million of millions of people who are pretty sure that they're misdiagnosed, underdiagnosed, overdiagnosed, mistreated, overtreated, undertreated, those kind of things. And this conversation's for them. I'm just supporting it. In fact, you are. You're right. You see, your diagnosis, Aaron, I know your diagnosis. Your diagnosis is Aaron. That's your diagnosis. You've lived a life. You're called Aaron. That's the life you've lived. That's what you got. You got what Aaron has. You got the past that Aaron has. You got the present that Aaron has. You got the dreams that Aaron has. That's it. You're Aaron. It's great. Yeah, I could put you into some basket with an alphabet soup diagnosis, and you call you BAD or call you ADD or call you PTSD or call you BPD or call you NPD or call you autistic spectrum disorder, or whatever, schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder. I can call you generalized anxiety disorder or social phobia, la di da di da. So what? You're called human, and this human thing is difficult, and it's really okay that it's difficult. You might recall that Buddha, he sat underneath a tree for, I forget how many days, but a long time. And he worked out the whole world. He worked out the whole thing. He figured it all out, right? I mean, we're still listening to him. We're still Dharma, and we're still getting we're really interested in what he came up with and what his disciples came up with, what he learned about the world. But imagine this. At some point, Buddha got up from that tree, right? At some point, he got up and started living life again. He had not resolved or reconciled at least one thing, which is that life is miserable. The dude worked on everything and stopped short of that one. At some point, he got the truth. Life is miserable. It's okay if you're occasionally miserable. I'm not hoping that on anyone. It's really miserable to feel miserable. I had an experience of it just a few hours ago, as I was just saying. Really miserable. And I can give myself the room of being miserable. I'm a little less miserable right now. And I wondered if I was going to bring my misery on today's show, but here it is. It really did happen. I don't need to be embarrassed about it. Many of us have been miserable in the last few hours. It's like okay to be miserable. It's okay to have that. Now, there are things that we can do to alter the misery. And that's what I have developed over the last several years. Welcome to Humanity became my brand. Good reason, right? You can hear how that fits to what I'm talking about. Welcome to Humanity. It's like the right answer to almost anything. And then I realized that, we're not speaking our true voice. If we're going to connect to people, we don't speak our true voice typically. Most of us are pretending to be someone that we're not in order to protect the person that we are. So we don't speak our true voice, and we don't speak genuinely. We learned how to do, when do you think we learned how to do that? Probably back in kindergarten when the teacher told you to sit down and not always speak to yourself. So, the crack in the cement has got larger and larger over time. We've never gone back to repair it. And some of us are just not saying or being who we know ourselves to be. In fact, it's gotten so crazy that some of us are actually saying things out loud that even we don't believe. What? What the hell is that? We've reached a point where we're willing to say things that even we don't believe. What kind of connection is that? That's just wild stuff. And everyone can relate. That's what's also weird. It's like, oh, yeah, I know people like that. And then you look in the mirror, you go, in fact, I live with someone like that. It's called me. So Find Your True Voice or True Voice technology was created and really helping people kind of move this stuff out of the way that's in the way of being your true self. Because in order to communicate effectively to somebody, you got to be in the tuning fork. You got to resonate with another human. In order to do that, you might as well be human yourself. It doesn't even work to pretend to be somebody else. It's like absurd and preposterous. you're still going to be dismissed. You're still going to be disregarded. You're still going to be like, you know, disrespected. You're still going to be thrown off the island. You're just not going to be you when you're thrown off the island. You're going to be the guy you were pretending to be. It's not a real good protection. That's my point. You know, the mass of men go through lives in quiet desperation and then go to their graves with their songs still in them. It's Henry David Thoreau. And, you know, it's really just one of the saddest, most tragic parts of what this life is about. You know, doesn't it seem like the worst thing in the world to go through a whole life and have nobody ever know you? Wow, what a freaking what a waste. So
Yeah.
True Voice technology was built for that, and then I wrote a couple books. One of them called Find Your True Voice, which builds on that. Another one called The Creative Eight, realizing that there's a lot of ways to express ourselves creatively, more than just speaking and listening. There's also art and music and dancing and singing and drama and cooking, writing, gardening, and a few others. And even being of service, which is the trump card of that book. That's the spoiler alert on that book. Um, so I did that. I created some courses. I started teaching people how to podcast because I think there's something beautiful about podcasting. You know, this is a place where we own the actual content, and we get to really target our niche audience, and say what we mean and mean what we say, and at least for the time being, not worry about being canceled or censored. And the culture has really shifted in the last several years. And so, Welcome to Humanity lives on, as does the True Voice technology and the Creative Eight. And then I've decided that there's things we can do to be less miserable. So I created the Moss Method, and the Moss Method, you can find that on my website and elsewhere. The Moss Method is a method of 20 things that we can do to maybe press forward without being inherently miserable. Like it's not hard to be miserable. You want to pick about 100 things to be miserable about, to be depressed about in the next 3 minutes. Between you and me, we could find 100. Do you want to pick about 100 things to be nervous about? Between me and you, in about 3 minutes, we could find 100. How about things to be afraid about? Yeah, for sure. Really terrified. Yeah, no problem. Like there's reasons to be miserable in the world. If you're looking for reasons, it's pretty easy to find them. But what's really here is the opportunity with the Moss method using simple, well-known, time-tested activities, including gratitude, meditation, nutrition, creativity, nature, service, um, spirituality, hydration, sleep hygiene. There's a bunch of things on this list, 20 deep, that are really simple to initiate. And I go into them a little bit in the Moss method about how to do them, the best ways to do them. So that you don't have to just simply accept misery. You don't have to accept it as a way of living. You can actually counterbalance misery to some degree by doing these activities, but don't expect it to go away. Don't expect it to go away. It's here to stay. It's what Buddha said. I really love Buddha. He said a lot of beautiful things, but misery is part of this human condition. So fast forward to what's happening now, I again have a job, which I almost can't believe that I have, but I have a job as a doctor. They count on me to diagnose and occasionally to medicate. So I'm doing that. But every script I write, my soul sacrifices. I'm doing that as a full-time situation. But I have an outside, hustle. We'll call it a hustle. It isn't really, it's really my passion, my real mission, which is to help people get that there's nothing wrong with them. And so that's my coaching. That's my speaking engagements, my keynote speaking, and my podcasting generally aim towards that. So I've been a guest on a couple hundred shows, and it's an honor to be on your show and really bring to your audience the idea that no kidding, there might be nothing wrong with you. It's okay that you think there is. I mean, our thinking really has us think that we are, but maybe there's nothing wrong with you. And if you get that, I strongly discourage you from going into the industrial psychiatric complex. Please don't do that. If you do that, we will create something wrong for you. Not only that, we'll give it a label that you'll never be able to watch off your record. And then we'll give you medicines, which actually make you worse. And then you'll have something wrong with you. And then you can explain why you've been a jerk with your wife, or why you can't finish tasks, or why you're awkward in social environments. And then you can explain why you're unable to sleep, or why you're scattered in your thinking, or maybe hearing what you call voices, which is just intuition. Every one of us is actually hearing voices. We've just classified it differently. And you can explain away all those things and get it's not you, it's your disease. It's not me, it's my fill in the blank. And there's some value to that. Most of us don't want to take responsibility for a life that's not working perfectly. But you don't have to go that way. It's really a better idea to just realize that what you're looking for is a human connection. What you're looking for is to be, communicated. And some people are like, well, there's some people who have given up on human connection, at least temporarily. They've tried, they've been hurt, their heart's been broken, they think it doesn't work. People are just don't match me or whatever. And then they chase down God, which is fine. I think God is a great place to chase. And or they chase down their pets, they fall in love with their farm animals or their dogs or the cats, and that's a good place to connect as well. But what we would really want more than anything, we like falling in love, and falling in love is by sort of the ultimate um, human connection. Somebody actually gets you, you actually get them, you're willing to dance together the rest of your life, or at least into the near future. And all that really is a refined human connection. That's really what we're here to do. I don't have much more to say after that. Thanks for giving me a long floor, but you really look at psychiatry as a field. I don't practice like everyone, and I'm starting to think these days I'm exploring different entrepreneurial activities. And just to be honest, and you'll be the first one who's heard this publicly, the idea is, well, is my mission even in mental health? Is it in psychiatry? Because I've been here long enough. I've lasted. Here I am. I've had a big, long, storied career with all those patients and all this experience. But maybe that isn't really where I'm best served. Maybe I'm best served being on stages or being in podcasts and getting people to realize that maybe there's nothing wrong with them. And there's a lot of ways to do that without pretending that psychiatry is the pathway. So there you go, Aaron. That's who I am. You asked for it. Now you got it.
There's a lot there to take in. That was brilliant. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I do have a couple of questions. We're going to go back a little bit to almost the beginning with the pressure to give medication and medicate people in the medical world. Where's that pressure come from? Is that from
everywhere?
Is that from pharmaceutical companies mostly, or is that just because it's just the way things are handled? Or
at this point, it's not the pharmaceutical companies that are asking me to medicate people. It's the general theme. It's a general paradigm in the world. When you come to a doctor, when you come to a psychiatrist, you're hoping for medication. Almost, if you want to talk therapy, you would have landed with a social worker or a counselor or a therapist of some sort, a clergy. But by the time someone shows up in a doctor's office, they're fully expecting medication. And so it's not actually the pharmacological companies that are encouraging me to medicate. It's the system, it's the industry, it's the paradigm, it's the modus operandi of the whole system. Meaning that's exactly what people want and what they expect. So when I'm hired on a job, and I've had about 500 jobs that I've signed contracts for in those same 40 years. When I'm hired for a job, what they're expecting me to do is utilize my signature so I can sign off on other people's work, or to diagnose. It used to be that doctors, not so long ago, doctors were the only ones who could diagnose. Now almost anybody can diagnose you, and that's just your diagnose. Like a social worker diagnoses you, it makes it into your medical record. Now you have that forever. But for medication, doctors and some nurse practitioners, occasionally other ancillary fields, have also began prescribing. But if you ask somebody, what's the difference between a psychiatrist and a psychologist? Almost 99% of the people have the same answer, and you probably do too. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, having issues there. I'd say one gives medication and one does therapy.
Exactly. Yeah, that's just how the industry has developed over time. That wasn't true when I came out of medical school. During that time when I first came out, it was very clear that psychiatrists did therapy too. But that's been washed away from us, and now we're the medicators, and every other one else does so-called therapy as if they're two different things. And I don't know how you can give medicine and not know your patients.
Yeah, I think it's some of that the culture and society that we live in now, because obviously people want to lose weight and go to the gym and stuff. They're looking for the quick fix. They're looking for the tablet or the injection, the magic formula that's just going to make the weight fall off and make them get to where they want to go without putting the effort in. Is that quite a similar
Well, it
concept, I
is.
guess.
It'd be good if that's what these medicines did. If they actually were a quick fix, I would prescribe them all day long. I think it's great. A quick fix would be fantastic. Except these medicines don't do that. They actually cause problems. So they're more like a band-aid with a razor blade embedded in it. Now imagine a band-aid with a really, and I'm not kidding about that. Like imagine a band-aid with a razor blade embedded in it. And you have a cut and I give you a band-aid and you put it on and then it's covered and your cut's not bleeding anymore. It's all good. And then over time, blood starts oozing outside of the band-aid and you're pretty sure that your cut has gotten worse. And the last place that you're going to look for trouble is going to be inside that band-aid. You're going to think, I mean, the band-aid's not causing the problem. That's what I take for the cure. So, if you really start looking at how the system works, if the medicines actually cause the symptoms they're marketed to treat, then you wouldn't even know it if you don't look at it. You wouldn't even know it. You'll think that your condition got worse. That's what happens. If people come in, they're nervous about their mother-in-law coming next week. And so they think they have an anxiety disorder and they start taking anxiety meds. And now they have an anxiety disorder because the meds actually caused it. And all they walk away with is, I'm sure glad I caught this early because it's gotten so much worse. And now I'm taking big loads of medicine, but I caught it on that weekend that my mother-in-law was coming. And they don't realize that the actual treatment and the therapies and the medicines are frequently perpetuating and increasing, and in fact, in not so rare occasions, truly causing the symptoms that they're marketed to treat. It's a rough system.
Yeah, it doesn't sound great, to be fair. It doesn't sound great. Is
We're all living it. And here's the thing: it's not like it's rare. Like we're all living it. It's in every kind. New Zealand. I thought I was going to New Zealand and I was going to find some some playground or something. Not at all. New Zealand's just as dug in as everybody. In fact, Africa's starting to get dug in. Asia's dug in, and Europe Europe is right here with the United States. Like it's a worldwide phenomenon.
Yeah, I think to be fair, the United States is kind of the world leader, isn't it? So everybody else kind of looks up to the United States for, how modern society should be, really, and everybody kind of models and kind of copies, the United States because they've had such great, success, become world superpower, etc. So everybody copies that model. So, but the problem is, we also not only copy the good stuff, we also copy the bad stuff, which obviously leads us into the same issues that you have.
I guess so. I appreciate that the world out there is still thinking that the United States is a big old superpower worth copying. That's fine. It's a good country. It's a great country. I heard someone yesterday saying it's the best country on the planet, and he really meant it, and I really get that. And United States is in some trouble, and I think every country is in lots of trouble these days. Most every country, and we're looking at some tipping points here. And to be upset about that doesn't mean see, it's like there's a tipping point. It seems like we're all aware with social media, insurgents and all. We're so aware that the thing could crash any moment. Like we're hit up with that all the time. We're terrified about the possibility of the thing just crashing. There's violence in the streets and breakdowns of systems and the end of the U.S. dollar and climate change or what, racism or sex trafficking or like wars all over the place, and maybe some new wars to start soon between countries that never fought each other. Who knows? And if you're upset about that and you walk into an emergency room, someone will give you a flippin' psychiatric diagnosis.
Yeah, that's a problem.
It's a problem. If you're upset with that, if you're not upset with that, you're not living. Like, I get it. This shit is scary, man. There's some scary stuff going on. It's okay to be depressed, anxious, and concerned, for sure. And there's nothing wrong with you, even though it feels horrible. I get it that it feels horrible. It feels horrible to me too. And it doesn't
Is
mean
social media part of the problem?
For sure. 100%.
I think so. I think, you look at social media and everybody puts only their best version of themselves up. So when you're looking at yourself, you're thinking, oh, everybody else's life is so much better than mine. And then you start, what's wrong with me? That can start that cycle, really. And then, next thing you know, you're looking at things online, this, random people with no medical history are diagnosing you online, saying, "Oh, if you got this and this and this, you must have this." You see it all the time.
Yeah, there's a lot of there's a lot of distortions, a lot of perturbations, and a lot of lies being generated. And then you're right, I get to show my greatest sense of myself, get to show the great food I'm eating, or my great family, or my great partner, or my great life, and get to say whatever I say, and not entirely, it used to be that in order to publish something, someone had to actually approve it. Now nobody has to approve anything. You just write what you write, be who you be. And it isn't always your best self. Sometimes you can show your worst self and call that your best self. So social media is just packed with nonsense, and you just doom scroll. I mean, I'm addicted to the phone like anybody. It's probably more than most. My wife would say it's more than most, and I get that. And I can't stand Facebook, but once I'm on it, I can't get off it. And it's like I hope that I start doing reels or doing stories or doing feeds of some sort, and then all of a sudden I'm getting fed the same stuff I read, whether it's like, videos of Bruce Springsteen or something about politics or something about cats. Or I have 3 cats, by the way. They're my gifts. They're awesome. My cats are the coolest. Um, and they have me basically, and they're so cool. And, um, and so is social media part of the problem? It's not like, again, you want to be careful not to like aim at an industry, call pharma a problem, call medicine the problem, call social media, because social media isn't a thing. It's nothing you can complain. There's nothing going on. It's people driven. There's no who I think I'll call social media this afternoon and tell it what I think. I don't think so. There's no item. There's no place to talk to. There's nobody there. There's nothing really going on. It's just a phenomenon. It's like, blaming rat poison for killing rats. It's like, not really. It's not the rat poison's fault. That's just what rat poison is. It's these set of chemicals and it kills rats. It's just social media. It's all it is. And we use it as we use it, and we watch it and post on it and comment and like and, join groups and um, try to connect or try to disconnect or yell at people or trolls and all, AI, all this nonsense. It's, totally distorting our sense of reality for sure. It's really hard to keep your feet up flat on the ground. Have you noticed that? It's really hard to keep your feet flat on the ground. It's really hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I mean, I get drawn into it a lot. I spend a lot of time scrolling and looking at stuff, and the algorithms are really clever as well. So they'll show you what you want to see, really.
They're
Or
amazing.
yeah, whatever you've been talking about or texting about, or they'll show you whatever you want to see, and
It's amazing.
they're very good at keeping you on the device. That's what the business is, keeping you
Yeah.
there, really.
Hmm.
And they are really good at it. Um, People do struggle with it, and I have seen a lot of people struggle with it. How it impacts them. Um, but again, like you say, it's not necessarily the problem as such, and it's us being able to understand that we're human and let ourselves off the hook a bit, really, rather than punish ourselves for, oh, I've been on this for an hour again. And then that's what the cycle starts, is when you start looking at yourself and start criticizing yourself.
Yeah. Exactly. And then, I'm sure that right around the corner, this addiction that you're talking about, it's kind of already here. Um, will be called a psychiatric diagnosis, and it's not, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. You're just normal. And you're like, I know somebody who watches Instagram less often than me, so they must be more normal than me. I don't know. They're just them. They're just you, it's okay. And what's it all lead to? It's hard. It's hard. It's hard to generate business with this model. It's not hard to get on stages with this model. It's not hard to get podcast guests with this model. I can do this all day, and this is interesting enough to the host all the time. It's compelling. I have my own experience. I have my education. I'm pretty articulate about it. I've been looking at this pretty hard for a long time, and I can create a connection about it. But who wants to come to a doctor to learn that they're okay? See, what it's a weird thing. It's like, if you're gonna just tell me I'm okay, I don't have to see you to learn that. I know I'm not okay, I'm going to go to somebody who confirms that. So there's a little twist in the connection. Now, on the other hand, this group that I'm creating, like the school group that I told you about, SKOOL, it's Alex Hormozi's group, school.com/welcome to humanity. It's a group right now, it's grown to about 200 members and it's growing pretty fast. And these are people who want to learn how to live life, learn how to manage and deal with the complexities and the craziness of life. And the Moss method is at the center of that, as is finding your true voice, as is creativity, as is welcome to humanity. And, you start really, those people are interested in learning. These people, it appears, are interested in learning how to live life. But to actually create a business model on letting people know that you're okay, you have to add something to that. So, I've been studying recently something called integrity-based human influence. And it's very interesting. It's a really interesting process. And there's a whole infrastructure and a whole vocabulary involved. And really just starting with the idea that you're the author of your life. You're the choreographer. You have agency and sovereignty in how your life goes to some degree. Can't control everything. You're not going to, like you said, be compassionate, forgiving, and accepting of yourself. But you have an opportunity to actually tweak this and tweak that and make some serious success while you're here. You really do. And, successful relationships, successful businesses, successful, self-care. You can make a lot of money if that's what you're interested in. You can make a lot of impact if that's what you're interested in. And that's really available in this integrity-based human influence model. So I'm excited about that too, incorporating that into my life.
Yeah, do you find that, so for me personally, it's only really, and that's part of what this podcast is about, is me finding myself, really, my true self. Like we all wear masks, and like you said previously about, it doesn't matter if it's who you're pretending to be or who you are, you're still as vulnerable to, society and whatever else, what other issues come up. So you might as well be yourself. And it's taken me 39 years to figure out that, to drop the mask and just be myself and stop trying to impress other people and whatever else. Is that a core of what you're doing there, is getting people to kind of understand who they are first and foremost, and then kind of move forward in the world with that?
Yeah, I think I couldn't have said that better. I mean, that's what we're really looking for. If you're going to communicate with someone, you might as well show up as yourself, right? If you're going to actually go out there and find the beauty of communication, the beauty of healing, the beauty of love, the beauty of connection, you might as well start with being yourself. And what that means, you don't have to look very far. You're with you. You're right here. That's where you are. And it's okay. And stuff has been covered over. There's been, rust and mud and cobwebs and blankets and masks that you put on or that happen to you over time. And it's really just a matter of capturing those, acknowledging those, and removing those, and then becoming genuine and authentic to yourself. If you don't speak your voice, no one will hear you. And if you don't speak your true voice, then, no one will know you. And you really, really get that. You really get that there is an opportunity to be known. And it's odd that I have to say this, but isn't it weird that you actually have to have courage to speak your true voice? It's like, God, that just seems so absurd. It just seems so absurd that it takes courage to be yourself. It's so sad, tears well up when I say it. It's just like, what a effed up world that we've come up to be that. You can't even speak your true self. You're so afraid. So afraid you're going to get kicked out. You're so afraid you're going to disrupt or cause problems, or that someone's going to misunderstand you and hurt you or insult you or slander you or censor you or cancel you, or you're so afraid of that you would rather sit there silent watching stuff happen that's unacceptable. Or, like I said, in the worst case scenario, actually raise your hand and say things that even you don't believe. Like, come on, man.
Yeah, it's like you said, go back to your school days, though, isn't it? But society kind of programs us and puts us in this box and trying to pushes us down that channel where we have to conform. So we kind of learn along the way to mask and kind of fit in rather than stand out and be who we are and be accepted. So I think that's probably why we struggle then, and we do need that courage to finally step free of that and just own who we are, and put your hand up and say, actually, this is who I am. This is what I'm all about. Like it or leave it. This is me.
It's interesting. So I hear that you've done the work, which I really appreciate for a man. I know you think it's taken you 39 long years, but you're pretty young when you look at 39 that way. And so being that young and having this reflective capacity is impressive. And um, what I have noticed, and maybe you're noticing it too, is the people that are willing to have that courage, we're like each other. Like they're not from that group or that group. They're actually from the group of honest, genuine, authentic self. We are like each other all of a sudden. We see that we're humans all of a sudden. I get that you are voting for him or you think this about that or you like, I get it. I get it that. But there's something about being authentic and genuine that allows for that frequency resonance that happens like a tuning fork, where we get to resonate with each other and cause each other to vibrate. And it's almost like no matter where you stand on any particular topic, if you're willing to step forward and be your particular self, you may find, it's kind of weird, but you may find that you've been standing a certain way on a typical topic so that you could stay in a particular group. And it's not really how you think about things anyway. That it certainly happens. This idea, these are divisive issues in our world, and we take the stand of people we are afraid of so that they won't hurt us. It's like, wow, dude.
Yeah, I see that a lot, especially in today's society.
Yeah, it's a deep sad tragedy. It really is.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I understand where people are coming from. I think if they don't kind of, they've been in this channel their entire life, and they're terrified to step out of it.
Yeah.
But I think that's why it's important. What you're doing is really important, and that's why I think what I'm doing is quite important. Is putting ourselves out there and allowing ourselves to be vulnerable, be ourselves, and show people actually it's okay to do that. I think by doing that, you encourage and enable more people to find the courage potentially to step up.
Yeah. Yeah. Authenticity breeds authenticity, and it's more powerful than agreement. Being authentic is more powerful than agreement. So we sometimes think that it's more powerful to just agree to avoid conflict. But really, when someone's authentic, you might even notice there's times that you've been talking to somebody and you disagree about something that is really important. Maybe, I don't know. In the U.S., it's always about the election, I guess. But maybe it's about climate change, or maybe it's about COVID, or maybe it's about, I don't know. I guess not too many people stand on the wrong side of sex trafficking, but you get my point. Like, you have a point and it's totally different than another person, such that you really believe that they're wrong because that you're right, which is a very dangerous place to be. But you believe that they're wrong. Well, when they're speaking their truth about how they feel and why they feel the way they are, if they're speaking authentically, if they speak it from their heart, if they speak it from their honest truth, like that's the life that they've lived that has led them to believe whatever they believe about whatever it is that you disagree with. When it's authentic, I can not only tolerate it, I can understand and be with it. It's like, okay, I get it. I get that I get that that's, if I was you, I would think that way too, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's something different, and you can kind of respect people's points of view when it's authentic and when it's not regurgitated from somewhere else. And there's something about it that you can kind of pick up on that kind of level of honesty and vulnerability, really, when people are explaining things, especially things that they're passionate about.
Exactly. You found it. That's right.
But there are a lot of people out there who will just jump on and agree with whatever their friends or their group subset group are saying, just because they think that's what they should do, really. And I've been there myself. I've done that previously, and that's why I'm where I am now on this journey, because I done away with that a long time ago because it wasn't serving me. It was just making me miserable, really, because I'm arguing over stuff I don't even care about for what.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it doesn't even work. It's totally ineffective approach. So not only is it ludicrous and preposterous, but it's not even effective. Exactly.
Yeah, it's true. And ultimately, I come back to what you were saying about, love and relationships. And ultimately, that is what it's all about, is building relationships with people. We're humans trying to live in a society and trying to, improve our lives and improve society as a whole. Um, and we need to be able to authentically engage with each other in a way that's going to allow us to develop, really, rather than get stuck in these boxes that we can't get out of, and just clashing over stuff that's not even important to us.
Exactly. Yeah, it'd be good, and I can't control you or anyone else, but I can do it. And like you said, um, for the rest of our days here, here's what it takes. The courage that it takes is, if we start looking at the future and the future looks really bleak, like it doesn't matter anyways, because X or Y is about to happen, and so what's the point? Then it takes all the wind out of our sails, and it's hard to actually stand up strong and do it anyways. Like the future is looking like it's shutting down anyways, so what's the point? That's a really tough phenomena to battle, extremely tough phenomena to battle. So it's sort of like running through the line. Like the idea here is to follow through. And even if you're going to only live one more day, free, or one more day alive, um, it makes sense to find a reason to live that day at the highest quality, even if it's about to crash. So if your big concerns are that the world's about to crash, and many people who have that concern, that even your world or the world or the community or your family or your relationship, when that happens, it colors our capacity to play all in. But if you can play all in just because you have the opportunity to play all in and not worry about the fact that the game is going to end soon, you have a good chance of actually going for it and living a life that works. A much better chance, anyway.
Yeah, well, I think the game is going to end for us all anyway one day, isn't it? We're all going to die eventually.
For
We
sure.
just don't know. We don't know when. So why are we pretending? Why can't we just find a way to live authentically, and find a way to enjoy the little moments in life and the things that genuinely make us happy and bring us joy? Because, like you said, life, it can be miserable. It can be really difficult, and you'll go through periods of difficulty. And it's about finding them small moments of joy, really, that you can really make the most of,
Yeah.
um, to make the most out of life, because it's so short, really.
Yeah, it is. Exactly.
So, and I think, yeah, and I think it's only recently, like I say, only recently that I've got to this point in my life, and I'd really like to help people get to that point. And I think from listening to what you do and how you were supporting people, that's your kind of mission as well, to help people, you know, find who they are, be happy, and get the most out of life.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, where's the best place for people to find you?
Well, people to find me, there's a few different places. You can, if you go to either of my websites, they have that trickles down to all the things that I'm offering. drfred360.com, drfred360.com is a compact place where you can see all my podcasts, and you can see all my books, and you can see all the freebies and the webinars that I put on. And, you can set up a discovery call and get some of my philosophies there. Or you can go to my main site, which is called welcometohumanity.net, where you can see it all kind of drawn out and spread out onto the page, onto a full web page. Those are the two websites. And then I have, you can get my books at both websites, and that's great. Or you can join my school group. My school group is exciting. We put together a couple hundred people who are looking how to manage the craziness of life. And that school group is called school, SKOOL.com / welcome to humanity / about. And that'll get you to the join page. And for now, anyways, at least at the time of this recording, it's still free. It'll be turning into a subscription service soon. I was looking for just a bunch of founding members, and I've got like 200 already. So um, I'm just having trouble shutting the door, and we're going to be creating the next iteration of that, which will be a subscription service. So if you want to be part of this movement in any real way, I invite you to come on in and do that as well. So, and I'm scattered like anyone over social media. You can find me in Facebook and LinkedIn are my two favorites, but I'm apparently posting a little bit in Instagram and in X. But if you really want to get in touch with me, the other two social medias as well as the Discovery Call is the best way to do that.
That's cool. I'll make sure to put the links in the show notes for people just to make it easier for them to find you as well.
Yeah, thank you.
But it's been really, really brilliant having you on the show. I've absolutely loved every minute of the conversation. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Aaron. Beautiful.
No worries. Take care.